Hello,
And welcome to
the Champagne Room Secrets Hot
Hot Top.
Tops. I'm Candy,
And I'm Kitty.
and we're two hot tops discussing the hot tops.
Amazing. All right, what's our hot top
Amazing.
today?
Trad wives. Trad wives, which is short for traditional wife.
The trad wife trend or the trad wife movement, lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, is rooted in women making content about traditional gender roles and marriage. And it's very driven by like aesthetic and ideals and trends. We looked into a couple specific creators, but I would say like across the board, the trad wife situation started trending in mid 2018 and then really peaked 2020 to now. It looks kind of different depending on the platform or the creator. A lot of them will have like a very vintage inspired 1950s or 60s look. Some are more cottage core. There's definitely big representation of like the rural chic homesteader, but a lot of them, pretty much everyone, it's high femme regardless of like what genre of femme it is. And it's mostly young white women. I wasn't served up a lot of diversity when scrolling through.
Young, white, attractive women. I guess not like all like influencer hot, but like, like really pretty. So
Mhm.
I wrote down, I've also, we just watched a bunch of videos, we read an article. I wrote down what I consider some of the hallmarks of being a trad wife. Now, these are less about like the aesthetic side and more about like the quote unquote like duty side. So basically, if you kind of like, I watched a lot of people kind of explain what it means for them. And one, the wife looks good for the husband. They take a lot of pride in looking good and sometimes like to the husband's preferences. Like they know how their husband wants them to dress, do their hair, appear, and they like to abide by that. The husband makes all of the money and is in charge of their financial decisions. They take pride in the fact that they do not make financial decisions. Sometimes the husbands make them without consulting them at all, and they are fine and well and happy with that. The wife cooks, cleans, and does not have a job outside of the home. And again, kind of this like coded thing of the wives submit to their husbands, which in my opinion, the husbands are getting sex when they want sex. I mean, you can submit in a lot of different ways, but that's kind of like how I'm taking it. A lot of them will quote like biblical stuff like gender and marriage and all these things. But those are kind of like the main hallmarks I was finding. There's like this aesthetic, this kind of fetish, if you will, which we'll get into. And then there's like, okay, like what are these bitches actually doing?
I agree across the board. The word submit and the word serve came up a lot. I also think there's a huge theme of Christianity or like Christian ideal leaning spirituality. Very rarely is there not like an overarching religious or spiritual ideology that they weave into the other beliefs that they are sharing.
So we're here to discuss if we think being a trad wife could potentially be a form of being a sex worker or doing sex work. And I think there are a few different aspects to that. One, which I didn't even think of until I was texting with the whole Champagne Room Secrets team about it last week and being like, oh my gosh, they're just sex workers. And then I think you or Jade brought up, it was like, oh, I can see like how it would be a fetish. And I'm like,
Oh yeah, that's the first thing I got was fetish from
yeah,
all of it.
that's so funny how we think about it differently. Because I was like, oh, yeah, like, oh, shit. Of course, it is like now fetishized. I guess like I was thinking more in terms of like housewives don't consider, at least these kind of housewives, like don't consider what they do like a job. They consider it an extension of their femininity and kind of like what they are designed to do in their with their womanhood, right? I don't believe that. I think it is a job. I think cleaning and cooking is a job, childcare, because you quite literally pay people to do it. So first it's like, okay, well, those are all jobs, especially if like when I mentioned submitting to your husband, if you feel like you need to like look, act a certain way, give your husband what he needs, wink, wink, even if you're not necessarily in the mood. And in exchange, you're being compensated with a lifestyle. That's what I was thinking about when it was when I was like, oh my gosh, this is giving me like sex work vibes.
I think you're totally spot on. When we like came up with the topic, I wanted to build out some questions. So I think there's a ton of different things we could talk about in this realm. But like my main questions for this is what are they doing or describing? Is that labor?
Yeah,
Is it for sexual entertainment? And then does that make it sex work or fetish content or what have you?
I know it's a big topic. There's like so many things intersecting.
My biggest feeling though is at the end of the day, the people that we looked into the most because they are the most like discussed names, they are content creators, and being a content creator is a full-time job.
There you go.
They
Right.
have jobs. Like they're doing
You
they're
you
saying don't have a
literally,
job. They're literally doing their job.
sorry to break it to you, buds, you're working.
It is in the home a lot of the time though, so good for them for being kind of
But
honest, but like it's a
TikTok
job.
is an entertainment app. You are a professional entertainer. If you are, I don't know how much money they're making. I imagine some amount because a lot of them have like a shit ton of followers, and that's how the internet works.
Yeah, I mean that was my immediate feeling was like looking at the amount of views and the engagement. I was like, this is your job. It may not be a lot of money. I have a lot of questions about money in general
Yeah.
with these folks of like where is it coming from? And maybe it really is that you have a partner who is doing well enough to support your lifestyle, but having bought like a couple of these cottage core dresses or like vintage inspired dresses, they're not fucking cheap. They're expensive. It's like an expensive lifestyle. The TikTok statistics said that over half of the videos tagged trad wife are being viewed by folks who are 18 to 24.
Do you think maybe everybody staying at home and learning how to bake bread in 2020 maybe like reignited or like made this fetish like kind of more popular because now we have to entertain ourselves and we just don't have as many options for like spending our time going out or whatever.
I have a feeling a lot of people, whether consciously or not, realize that they have some kind of service related fetish, like submissive leaning service. And that looks a lot of different ways for people, but I do see a lot of people having that specifically around like domestic duties. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
domestication is a whole rabbit hole you could fall down, but I do think like there's perhaps a greater appreciation for that. I think it also really gives like mommy vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Big time mommy,
Yeah.
stepmommy. I have a feeling a lot of people have like fallen into that interest, whether or not they know it because of like consuming this kind of content. It's really hard to hear the word submit and not think BDSM for me.
Right. Also, I don't know if they say this word, but I know this has come up like in like marriage vows and like it's a thing that people are removing, but like oh, the term obey seems like there's somebody who would like these people, these trad wives like keep that in their marriage vows. Like, I'm gonna obey and submit to my husband.
I mean, the main ones I heard were submit and serve, which are just
Oh my
so
God.
horny. Some of the people who I saw like analyze their content did find some of these folks following and liking content, especially on Instagram, that was heavily obey related, obey your husband.
I genuinely do not care if people want to live like this. Like, I don't even think it's like inherently bad. I think the direction it can go, like, there were, like, the article you sent me and some stuff, like, there are some traditional values that could be dog whistles for like some really crazy, like, racist white supremacy stuff, which obviously is bad. I would just hope that they are like making the right decision for themselves. They don't feel trapped. I think that's something that like comes up a lot for me because when you do not have financial control, what are you supposed to do if things go south? But like I don't think it's bad. That's the thing. It's more kind of like the hypocrisy around it. And then of course, like the judgment of how feminism has ruined what being a woman is. And then there's like the weird aspect of like glorifying the 1950s, which listen, we've all dressed in pinup. It can be well and cute. Let's not forget that the people in the 50s stayed home moms, people in business, everyone was like drunk all of the time.
I mean, that last point's really interesting because if we're thinking about that era of uncompensated domestic labor, it was a very communal time in terms of household raising family and whatnot because everyone on your block was doing it. So you were building relationships with other women. I don't know how popular this was for like white people then, but like multi-generational households, like multiple generation splitting household labor was a thing. Yeah, I do agree. Like there's nothing inherently bad with having this type of relationship dynamic. I think like I've definitely had relationship dynamics where I did more of the domestic labor, which is technically uncompensated. Like it's not a paid job, but it is labor that is part of an agreement in which I also get a desired thing for me as well.
I was gonna say, well, like Kitty, you and I, we are kind of like just trad
It's
wives in
we're
a way.
essentially trad wives who also are fine with having jobs.
But our
So
partners are the primary breadwinners. And I mean, like I've talked about it, like my situation is you guys, my primary partner, Billy Bob. It's like, yeah, I give him like a little money every month for rent and expenses, but generally like he takes that on. And there's been periods where he has paid for everything. And I personally would love to get to a point where I can like give more just because he does work really hard and eventually wants to like transition to a more creative, less corporate job, which is what I do. So I feel like if I don't like accept that, I'm gonna hypocrite. But like I definitely benefit from that.
I think we have very parallel financial slash labor situations. I think you and I both have like our finances separate from the partners we
Yes.
live with. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's like a piece that maybe we differ
that's
in terms
true.
of this trend. No, that's why I feel comfortable talking about it. It's like I kind of do this, you kind of do this. We just also are fine with saying that this labor is part of an exchange. For me, it doesn't really have much to do with God. He doesn't help
Mm-mm.
around the house.
God doesn't do your laundry.
And then we also have jobs.
Yeah, you guys both have a combination of paid and unpaid labor. And it's not like your partner is like directly compensating you for doing your labor. But if you are spending less money on your lifestyle because of that, it's like, well, like, a little bit. And I guess it's like where I get stuck because I'm like, you are doing a job and you are being compensated for it. And sometimes I think it could be considered sex work. I think if you know that wearing red lipstick and dressing in a certain way is gonna like get your husband hot because you want to do that for him and he wants a blowjob and you don't really love giving them, but you do it. So you have this lifestyle. I don't know. It sounds like sex work. I don't know. And like
Well,
not
and
in a
it's
bad way.
and what's the difference between this lifestyle and being a sugar baby? Is it just the language you use to describe it and how you think about
Yeah.
it? We talk about this, you and I, privately, but I know you've mentioned the Girls Next Door show and Hugh Hefner's girlfriends who were featured. Bridget and Holly both said that they wouldn't consider themselves sex workers regarding their living and financial agreement with Hugh Hefner when they were dating, which was he would house them and give them an allowance, and in return, they would present themselves exactly how he wanted, live a lifestyle how he wanted, and including having sex how he wanted when he wanted. These all kind
Yeah.
of
I
sound
mean,
the same.
that's the thing. And like most people do not want to be associated with that term because it is a sex work because that is a very negative connotation. But it doesn't mean that's not what's going on. And maybe there are situations, maybe the housewife is just really horny all the time and she just wants to get railed constantly. Maybe that doesn't come up. I don't feel like that's true. I feel like women and men view and think about sex like a lot differently and just get like different things out of it and require different things. And I got to be honest, I don't think the men in these situations, the going out and working, coming home to their wife, like I'm just going to assume they're not going out of their way to like please their wives sexually. If you're an
Yeah,
outlier, then great. I'm literally happy for you. You're not what I'm referring to. I think that's beautiful.
that's a slay for you, and we love to see
That's
it.
exactly literally a slay. Like, good job. Keep doing what you're doing.
But we should talk about who we actually looked at today.
Gwen, who used to go by Gwenny, I think was her YouTuber handle, right? Or
Gwen
YouTuber
Gwen Gwiz.
Gwen. Oh, sorry, Gwen Gwiz. So I actually knew about her because my partner loves ASMR and would like listen to her back in the day. And I'm like, And they're like the really, really close up videos, and she's just like talking and like whatever. I'm like, this is horny. Even if it's not like sexual, which I think she was kind of experimenting, then eventually made an OnlyFans, which I'm like not even like, I don't fucking care. Like, good. Watch horny content. But it was like, huh. And then a few months ago, she kind of disappeared and then like came back to the internet.
There's a TikTok user named Virgo the Rachel who did a deep dive. So I followed her timeline. She, being Gwen the Milkmaid or Gwen Gwiz, posted her like last ASMR video on February the 8th this year, 2023. And then Gwen the Milkmaid popped up on TikTok 2 days later.
Oh my God, 2
Hard fucking
days.
pivot. I wrote a couple of her captions down because they really got me going.
Please read them.
So the top hit was POV, you used to be pro-abortion, anti-marriage, lesbian, feminist. Feminist is in quotes, so I don't I don't know what she means by that. Maybe
Right,
she's saying
right.
she was really shitty at feminism.
Maybe.
But now you're getting married to your fave man on earth, love serving him, and can't wait to make lots of babies. Okay, so
Okay.
we didn't talk about breeding kink either. So there's
Oh my
that.
God. There's just so much. There's so much.
Also,
And it's
milk.
like, don't even get me started on breastfeeding. Don't eat. I can't.
So that's how like I think a lot of people started pulling at the strings of this ball of yarn that is Gwen the Milkmaid.
Yeah.
Um, another one I just this one really cracked me up as well. Women submit to their bosses and no one bats an eye, but the moment a wife submits to her husband, it's quote oppression or quote slavery.
So no one else submits to their bosses, just women, and women only have male bosses too. So I don't know if you guys knew that's how work works. That's how,
That's jobs.
because Gwen was doing like a little bit like fetishy ASMR content that was like fetishy, but not really. I'm like, did you just find this niche? And then you're like, wait a second, I can make this fetishy.
Over time, her ASMR started leaning more sexual and she was getting demonetized on YouTube because of it being essentially adult content. So that's when she started her OnlyFans and did really well. Gwen the Milkmaid. It's giving kink for me.
It really is, because it's like there's no substance. It seems very superficial. It's like if I put on a nurse outfit and pretend to be your nurse, like that's what it's like. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's fun and sexy, but it's like, and that's not the bad part. I think the bad part is just like pretending that it's something else and then also being like, well, I mean, we all hate the government, but for different ways. Don't listen to the government and don't take vaccines and like kind of all of these like conservative values and stuff. So that's the thing. It's kind of like, I don't think this is bad. I think it's great. If you find out what you like and you're living and your life and your partner like allows you to do those things, awesome. It's just like the hypocrisy is what really gets me. If you're presenting it like it's a fetish, you know what you're doing, okay, then you're a fetish worker, then you're a sex worker. If you are providing sexual services to your husband and like doing exactly what he wants in exchange for these goods in exchange for services, you're kind of engaging in some sex work.
If you really do believe in what you're sharing and what you're creating, it really reminds me of like full lifestyle kink dynamic. And that's lit. I hope the husbands, boyfriends, partners really fulfill their half of that agreement because that would be dope. That would be so fucking cool and I'd love that for them. But the hard thing is if it's like somewhat intentionally like fetish leaning or like sexual entertainment content and sharing values that are harmful, that sucks for me and probably
Yeah,
sucks for a
yeah.
lot of people.
Because like the people who like engage in this lifestyle but are open about it, like, yeah, we have a serve and obey thing, whatever. And like that's our thing and we like it and they act their lives the exact same way, but they're just like really open about it. I'd be like, okay, yeah, I fuck with you guys. Like, let's hang out. But like doing everything under the guise of like, we do this because of God and because it's natural and because of like this and we're better than you. It's like, no, like fuck right off. Like you're not better than anyone else.
Yeah, especially with Gwen, so much of it is like POV content. And to me, it's like service submission and breeding, and it's like a very different or a very particular aesthetic that's very attractive. Even the title of Milkmaid, like that's horny.
Anything with a milk,
You know,
horny.
a milkmaid because she's like a young service girly and she's touching those udders.
I
Yeah,
guarantee they didn't put like the hot bitches back then into milkmaid duties. I'm just gonna say.
but she's got the good jerking hands, she's strong. She's strong.
That's true.
I have one quote from Deep Diver, lovely resource, Virgo the Rachel.
Yeah.
Speaking to what you said, she was like, why are we acting like right-wing people are always really firm in their morals and never contradict themselves? So
Yeah.
maybe it's real, and maybe she's also full of shit.
I was going to compare it to the other creator that we were kind of deep diving, Estee.
Estee, like Estee
Estee.
Lauder.
Is that her name? I just know that's her handle.
Yeah, her handle's Estee C. Williams or SDC Williams. She started her tradwife content on TikTok in early 2022. So she's had like a year longer career in this field.
In this field of work,
In this
because
job.
in this job of being an online creator.
I took notes from her how to be a tradwife video, which I think is the one you sent me.
Do you want to get into your notes?
Sure. So she made a video, I think it's probably her most popular video of just saying, like, here's how to be a trad wife. She says that you have to adhere to ultra traditional gender roles, not even traditional gender roles, standard or light. You got to go deep in those roles. Some of her points are honestly pretty good, and I think that's why she's such a popular creator, because some of these things are like, yeah, that's actually good advice. So she says, marry the right man, meaning don't marry someone who abuses you.
Or is broke, because you can't have his lifestyle.
Yeah, she didn't.
You marry a
not-
brokey.
She
That's
didn't
the
say
thing.
that outright, but like that, yeah, okay.
That's the thing. It's another thing that it's like, it's not said, but that is the reality of the situation. You're marrying a guy who's going to make money and financially take care of you. It's like, this is not Cinderella, okay? He's not like an actual literal prince with a palace. Like, he has to go to work.
Yeah, and her like additional point on that was you should only be dating for the goal of marriage, which is like, yeah, that's just making sure you have the right clients.
Right.
That's just screening, babes.
That's just screening. That's just client screening.
Like, if you're gonna get married, don't marry someone who is very bad for you. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Love that. She
That's
said,
great advice.
learn to cook and clean. And I'm like, everyone should do that.
Everyone should learn to do that. And those are very real skills. Guess what? I know women who don't know how to cook or clean. I only know that because like I was raised and like really socialized that way. And not even from like a gender dynamic, just because like my mom really enjoyed it and like I learned to really enjoy it and like now I can cook whatever. But I kind of like that she does like those are skills that not everyone has and those are important to know, but they're not inherently like woman skills.
Yeah, they're good things to have. She even said something like, it doesn't even have to be for your family or your home or your husband. I forget exactly what she said. She's like, it could also be good for you. I'm like, yeah. And then she says, have something for yourself. It's not for your husband, it's not for your family, it's not for your household. And put it into your life every day. I'm like, that's amazing advice.
That's great
everyone.
Advice. Yeah, absolutely.
Learn to cook and clean. Don't marry someone who is bad for you, and also have a hobby. Great advice.
I think those are like universally good pieces of advice.
And then she dips back into the trad thing of being like, beauty maintenance is key. You have to be fit, you have to be healthy. You should try to adhere to what your husband likes for him, and you'll find that rewarding.
You'll find that rewarding to be his own personal sex doll, which again, is hot, can be hot. Just know what you're getting into.
She's not, I don't actually find her that controversial, but like there are a ton of articles on her and videos and whatever. And I feel like her popularity brought a lot of eyes to the whole trad life thing. But yeah, I don't know. She's very interesting. She also shared those relationship rules, which I think you sent me.
So it's kind of basic stuff like, I don't leave the home after dark. Okay, because of safety. I'm like, sure. I'm not friends with anyone of the opposite sex. Okay, so they just like don't believe in. I mean, obviously that's like a shitty thing because gender's stupid, but also like if you are adhering to those rules, it's like so you can't have like a gay bestie. Nope, can't be friends with any men.
She did share something about having like bad experiences when she went out alone at night, and I'm like, that made me sad. If you're afraid of going out at night alone, cool, don't. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But making it like a relationship rule, puts it in this really weird power dynamic place.
I mean, it's
For me.
literally one of the rules that Hugh Hefner gave his girlfriends at the mansion. Like they
Yeah,
can't leave.
home by 9 p.m. because
Yeah.
that's when he goes back into his coffin.
Okay, so number three of her like relationship, I don't know if these were like advice or whatever. So things she does in her relationship: submit and serve my husband. And then she says, because this is biblical. I think this is actually a reading from the Bible.
Yeah,
I think
I
like a
found it.
quote.
Yeah,
Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. They really did not know how to write sentences back then. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything.
that's king.
Not slay.
Daddy God is big daddy, and then husband is little daddy.
Big daddy, little daddy. Everything is kinky. Everything is sex work.
It's
That's
all
the
horny. And like obviously that has been used for very bad things on the
yeah.
interpersonal and like societal level. But
Right, right.
I just submit and serve to this man. If you like it, that's kink.
It is. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. And
Yes,
then
it is.
also, getting into a marriage when you're quite young. Sorry, your brain is not as developed, okay? Like if you get married when you're 22, not to say this is like all trap wives, I don't fucking know who does this. You get into something, you become financially dependent. We hear about this all the time. Like it's hard to like get out of situations. So I think everyone should have a prenup. That is my advice as someone who's not married.
As someone who got married at 22, they better be careful because look what happened to my life. Now I want to hit people for money.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my
Yeah.
God. Wait, and then like I'm not a woman anymore, and
Oh my
like
God.
I'm even more radically feminist. They better watch out. Maybe don't follow traditional values because you could turn into me.
You found the leftist agenda.
The fact that she calls these things rules is what makes me really uncomfortable. Because even in like non monogamy and polyamory, I find the phrase rules really uncomfortable because it should be
Yeah, I
like
agree.
agreements because you agree
Right.
on it.
That's the thing. And that's the whole thing, like obey and submit. Like this is non-negotiation. I am submitting to you. You are gonna run my life. And fine. But there's just a lot that I think that comes with that is not always being represented and like not being like honest with like people, especially if you have young people 18 to 24 watching your content. I like with anything on the internet, just think critically about it, like that's why we're here to break down these things. So is being a trad wife a sex worker? I mean, not fully, not exactly. I think there are parts of sex work potentially in trad wife arrangements.
I mean, I think when the milkmaid, having done OnlyFans, I imagine it's horny ASMR adjacent, and that's sex work and good for her. I hope she's making lots of good money off of that. Talking shit about it then is fucking weird. Why be like that when you could be cool? But whatever. Content feels very leaning into fetish in a quiet, lovely little way, and I wish she would just be cool about it. Este, her content isn't so horny in what she says or what she writes, but she maintains a very, very like high femme aesthetic. She's super hot and she is absolutely like leaning into this retro inspired aesthetic that is horny for a lot of people. And like I don't think it's fair to say like just a beautiful woman who's like curvy is always making content for the sexual gratification of followers, but I do think talking about being submissive and looking like intentionally looking that way is something.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of saves on her videos, people are jerking it. And
Yes.
maybe that's not her intention. So then the question is like, well, then is the lifestyle that she's claiming to live, is that sex work? I think that's the hard thing of like, we're calling sex work because it's a type of labor that previously wasn't recognized as labor. That doesn't mean that all other things that people do are outside of that realm. It's just like, what are people willing to categorize and what are people willing to recognize as labor? Like, I don't know, maintaining a whole household and being
Yeah.
perfectly in shape and like fucking beating your face at 8 a.m. every morning so your man doesn't know what your skin looks like.
Getting back into bed, like in Bridesmaids, where she does her makeup and then gets back into bed. Oh, sorry, I just woke up. It's very frustrating to me because I think in general we have more in common, like as femme people in certain relationships than like people would assume. Most people think, including myself, that like the way we live life is the best way. Like we are ideally making the best decisions for ourselves and we need to be examples to other people. And I just think that's a little like ignorant and like hypocritical. So I don't know. It's just like I think it's an interesting like thought experiment to like kind of break apart this thing and be like we said earlier, it's like you and I do a lot of trad wife duties.
I've done the service submission apron vintage aesthetic thing for fun, and it is fun and it's very cool, and there are a lot of men who really 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 fucking like that, and I think if I gave a shit about doing that again, I could probably do quite well for myself.
There's nothing I would love more than to just get day drunk and clean my house in a dress. That sounds like
Just pop
actually
some quaaludes and just like go off on that kitchen.
slay.
Is it sex work? Maybe. I mean, I think my point at the end of the day is there's probably a lot of things that we would consider sex work that aren't because they aren't counted as labor.
Also, more traditionally domestic or feminine work should be considered labor, should be considered jobs. And people say like, oh, the feminist movement's like lying to us and it's like tricked women into like getting jobs and then also having to like do all the work at home. You're like, yeah, I mean, I can see that because it's like, yeah, for some people, you're having to go to work full time and then also be a full time homemaker. That is two full time jobs. So it's like, I get that, but let's break that apart. Let's not blame empowered women and let's like look at things a little differently.
I'm really proud of you for sticking to traditional values and making really, honestly, really good bread.
Wait, good money bread or actual bread? You guys, I did bake like 6 loaves of bread this weekend.
I think I was thinking about the actual bread that you made because, bread TikTok is a thing. You made great bread. I loved it.
I do like the trad wives. Some of like the lower key trad wives will be like talking about or like doing the captions with the trad wives, and just while they're like holding bread that they made, I'm like, you guys, making bread at home is not that hard. Okay, we need to stop.
We're done. We're done.
We're done.
We're done with the episode.
We're done. All right. Love you guys. Subscribe, please. Maybe give us a little review. I just redid all of our social medias. We're going to be posting a lot more on them. So pretty much anywhere you can find us. And we will see you on Monday, or you will hear us on Monday.
All right. Milk you later, babes.